all these chemicals, if there was a risk of poisoning the environment, then we were the risk takers. Poor people, people of color, we were the risk takers. It was an acceptable risk. What I'm saying is that we who are conscious have to look at the phenomenon of racism. So we look at the pesticides as an example. It's okay to kill the bugs. It's going to increase the crop yield. So what? If we got to produce it in a community someplace. So what if the workers at Monsanto who come up with stuff all the time, carried home in their clothes, washed with the rest of the family's clothing, everybody gets sick, cancers all over the place, so what? That's an acceptable risk. We'll increase the yield. For whom we will increase the yield?
We had a 1958 law, Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, provision called the Delaney Clause, which was repealed by Congress. And we went from an unacceptable carcinogen or regulating unacceptable carcinogens to determining acceptable rates of exposure to carcinogens. And this is Lois Gibbs with her child and my family that came out to join a rally before a hearing outside Congress. Thank you. My kids are here and my wife as well, Lois. I don't know if your son's here. But then we moved on to lawn care.
When we come back, we'll be joined by a consumer advocate who says those gorgeous green lawns aren't worth the threat to public health.
And the industry started pushing back. Not that they weren't before. And we would see ads like this coming out. And what this is like these manly gloves, right? And it says, because of activists, extremists, and misinformed politicians, consumers are questioning whether the products and resources, such as water, used to care for their lawns, landscapes, and other green spaces are a waste or a harm to the environment. Our response? Get a grip. The inadequacy of federal action results in increasing pressure on state and local governments. That's what's happening, has been happening. And we have engaged at the local level, both state and local, and we've achieved 21 states regulations that restrict pesticide use in schools. 21 states require posting signs and notification on landscapes. 14 states require prior notification to those on a registry. 19 states require restrictions on rights-of-way use. And here's the important one. 122 local communities restrict pesticide use on public property, 3 on property, including private property. So our campaign is for pesticide-free zones, and that was expressed very clearly recently in a ordinance passed in Montgomery County. I want to recognize Ling Tan from Montgomery County, who's here with her 2 kids, who passed an ordinance that affects 1 million people, the largest in the country, that takes away pesticide use on private and public lands. Maryland's one of 7 states that does not preempt local jurisdictions from adopting standards that are more stringent than the states.
Look at them jumping several 497 that this video is taking bullshit
of the industry, chemical industry, going state by state to preempt local jurisdictions after the Supreme Court upheld the right
521 M, and it's only 417. 4 minutes. Unreal.
Crises before.
Pesticides are poison. That's why I think you should come to this big meeting to stop the poisoning at the Riverside Church. Famous doctors and scientists will be there, and so will Ralph Nader.
Yay!
Skipping.
Ralph Nader is our leader, and we're really pleased to have him here with us today.
look at that. So now I won't be able to upload it because they're sitting there jumping.
So, and then there are pollinators. You've heard about the colony collapse disorder, the demise of bees, pollinator health. Our job is to bring issues like this into the forefront. It takes years. Those stories didn't just appear on the front pages of our newspaper. It was years and years of education. 1/3 of all the food we eat is dependent on pollinators for its production. Without bees, our survival is threatened. Yet EPA is eager to register the next new pesticide. And so they did that with the neonicotinoid pesticides, which are systemic chemicals. They invade the vascular system of the plant and then express themselves through the nectar and pollen and indiscriminately attack beneficial organisms, bees, birds, butterflies. We brought a truckload, well, the bees aren't actually in the hives, but a beekeeper came to the EPA to make that point. Congressman at the time, Kucinich, joined with us to point out that this was an unacceptable hazard. And then beekeepers speak.
We started looking at pollen samples. We started seeing things that nobody ever knew was there. Looking at pollen samples, we're finding as high as 127 different contaminants in a little sample of pollen about the size of your end of your little finger.
So here's where the transition happens for us. Yes, we won tremendous battles. We got wood preservatives out of playground equipment. We got Chlordane off the market. We removed Dursban got that off the market. I mean, we could go down the list of chemicals, but as other speakers have said, what we were really interested in is institutional change that didn't allow these chemicals on in the first place and question whether the hazards associated with these materials was valid. And we found that they were unnecessary and in fact were not even beneficial. And yet the government was always looking for the cure, and we're saying the cure is prevention. Let's not use these in the first place. And we see the billions of dollars going into coming up with the cure for the disease that's created by the chemicals. That's when the organic shift began to happen for us in a big way. But we as an organization fought for organic from the very beginning. We introduced the Organic Farming Act, didn't pass the Agricultural Productivity Act, which set up the Low Input Sustainable Ag Program, and then the Organic Foods Production Act, which created the symbol that you see in your grocery stores today. We did that. We did that with farmers and consumers and environmentalists. We created that law. It includes the values and principles that we believe in. It is our law that enhances the biological systems, protects biodiversity, and invests in our future, in the sustainability of the planet. It looks at the whole system. It looks at the things Pat Bryant was concerned about and Nelson Kataski is concerned about. What are the impacts from manufacturer use, misuse to disposal? We don't do that with pesticides. What are the impacts on human health? Biological and chemical interactions that occur. We're not doing that with pesticides, and we've seen this tremendous growth. But beware, because USDA, even though it's in USDA, we created an independent board, but that independent board is constantly being threatened. USDA is captured by the industry, by big food industry. So this growth is something that is very tenuous. We need to protect this growth. Now we see others embracing
Jay
organic.
Feldman of the advocacy group Beyond Pesticides has heard that before.
When you call these types of conclusions junk science, then you're basically ignoring the body of scientific literature. You see incredible connections between brain cancer, leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, with a lot of these chemicals that are used in turf management.
We are absolutely going towards more environmentally and people-friendly products because it's the right thing to do.
I used to go out and talk to these guys, these golf course superintendents.
More environmentally and people-friendly products because it's the right thing to do.
I used to go out and talk to these guys, these golf course superintendents, and the first thing I'd say in my speech to them is, I'm here today as a messenger, and you have to promise me one thing: you will not kill the messenger. So we brought that message to them. We reached out, and most recently to local hardware stores, and this is the response we're getting.
Because they knew we had the organic section, and when they saw it, they just focused on what they were here for. They picked out the varieties they wanted and left with them very happy. You're protecting the environment, and you're protecting your family, your children and grandchildren, or your neighbors. Nobody wants to have pesticides drifting into their front or rear yard, and people are just loving it. They're feeding into it. I couldn't be happier.
So I promised we'd end on an upbeat note.
We had the organic section, and when they saw it, they just focused on what they were here for. Section, and when they saw it, they just focused on what they were here for. They picked out the varieties they wanted and left with them very happy. You're protecting the environment, and you're protecting your family, your children and grandchildren. Or your neighbors. Nobody wants to have pesticides drifting into their front or rear yard, and people are just loving it. They're feeding into it. I couldn't be happier.
So I promised we'd end on an upbeat note. These are the people that are driving the change. We are reducing our impacts on children and the elderly, on farm workers, on chemical workers. The safety of our food supply, the water supply is improving as a result of this transition to organic. These are all achievable. These are all achievable with organic if organic remains true to the principles and the underlying moral standards that are inherent in the statute. As Ralph Nader has taught us, it is the citizenry and advocacy organizations based in science and law that must keep us on track. It is the experience of people and our ongoing advocacy, our collective advocacy, that will move society in the direction it must go to sustain life. And individual and collective action will take us to the tipping point, which is within our sight, a sustainable and livable future. Thank you very much.